This is Trevell Coleman. When he was 13 or 14, he started selling drugs.
Believe it or not, it was kind of like a status symbol where I lived at to, sell drugs. Like, you were in the in crowd. It seemed like that was all I had. Like, I really didn't see any other, option.
Trevell spent a semester at college before dropping out. He told his mother he wanted to try to become a rapper. He and a friend would pool their money to pay for a few hours here and there at a recording studio. They'd record a handful of songs, and then they'd try to play the songs for people who might know someone in the industry. He was still selling drugs. He says that's where he got the money for the recording studios. Trevell also decided to buy a gun. He says it felt like something he was supposed to have, just in case.
It was like an accessory. Like, you got, your keys, your wallet. It was an accessory.
He says he never used it until one night in October 1993. Trevell Coleman was 18 years old. Late one night, he was riding around Harlem on his bicycle.
And I didn't plan on actually doing anything. I just had a gun. I happened to see a guy. I was like, okay, well, maybe I could just rob this guy.
He says he got off his bike and pointed his gun at the man and asked for money. And then, he says, the man reached for the gun.
We kind of struggled, for the gun. And I wound up, doing something that I didn't, mean to do. I wound up shooting the guy.
Trevell says he quickly got on his bike and left.
I never knew what happened, though. You know what I mean? I wasn't sure what happened that night. When I went home, I just kind of buried my head in the bed, and I kind of wished that didn't happen. It was just kind of like a nightmare. You know what I mean?
When you woke up the next morning, did you tell anyone what went on the night before?
Nah. When I came out, I was riding the same bike, and some officers kind of pulled me over. I was nervous, and then they asked me. They said, "Do you know anything about a shooting that happened last night?" And I was like, "Nah," But by them saying shooting, I thought maybe he was all right, because they didn't say murder or anything like that.
Did you think in the following days, were you always thinking to yourself, at any minute, I'm going to be arrested, the cops are going to show up, they're going to stop me?
Yes.
10 days after the shooting, Trevell was walking around with friends when a police car pulled up. He was handcuffed and taken to the police station. He kept waiting for the police to say something like, "We got you." But they didn't. And then he was released. It didn't have anything to do with the shooting. Later, he was arrested again for selling cocaine and ended up serving 7 months in prison. Were you ever thinking, if they found out that I shot someone, I could be in here for a lot longer?
Yes. That's what I thought a lot. It was a grim feeling.
When he got out of prison, Trevell decided to try to focus on his music. When Trevell got to the studio, someone from Bad Boy Records was there too.
They was like, "Yo, look, would you want to sign to Bad Boy?" And that's just how that went. In 1998, I got signed. At that time, that was the biggest rap label probably in the world, you know what I mean?
Did they give you a lot of money?
Yeah, I got a significant amount of money.
By the time he was signed to Bad Boy Records, it had been 5 years since the shooting.
The euphoria of being signed, when it wore off, I was right back to, how I thought again, okay, now this would be terrible if they come now, you know what I mean? So.
About a decade had passed since that night in 1993. By now, Trevell had met a woman named Crystal Sutton. They had twin boys together.
I started really appreciating life a lot more, you know what I mean? And I started really reflecting on what might have happened, And I was like, wow, well, what if this guy had, kids? Or what if this guy, I used to just compare my life to his always. It was like a parallel, you know what I mean? Wow, well, what would he be doing right now? It was one of them things. I just started just thinking more and more about that night, I just couldn't escape it.
Trevell Coleman says by this time, he thought about it every single day. He remembers one time he was staying in a hotel and taking an elevator. He says it just hit him. Suddenly it felt like the people in the elevator were the man's family, just looking at him. He tried to talk about it with Crystal.
I said, yeah, I'm thinking about I might turn myself in. She was like, what would that do? Like, what do you think that would do? Like, she wasn't really looking at it from the standpoint I was looking at it from. I knew, what I needed to do, you know what I mean? I started thinking about it more and more. I'm like, well, look, like, I just felt like that was the only way I can resolve it, you know what I mean? Like, you understand, if something been on your mind for the past 15 years, you feel like you want to do anything to get to the bottom of it. Like, okay, look, what can I do about this? And then I just thought about it, well, if I turn myself in, I could find out what happened to him. And if something did happen, then here we go. And then I could kind of move on.
Because you didn't know if he was alive or dead?
No, I didn't. I didn't know.
Did it get to a point where, even though if he had died, you knew that you would be going to prison for a very long time, it didn't matter anymore?
Nah, it didn't matter.
By this point, it had been 17 years. Trevell walked into a police station to turn himself in. He was 36 years old. Trevell told them what he remembered, what the man had looked like, exactly where the shooting had happened, and what kind of gun he'd used. Then he signed a confession. The last line of the confession read, "The reason I turned myself in was because I felt awful about what I did, and I wanted to make it right for this guy's family." And then afterwards, he says an assistant district attorney came in to tell him what had happened to the man. What did he tell you?
He was like, yeah, the guy did die that night. Well, I'll never forget how I felt. I was like, just his words, it just echoed like the guy died. At that point, it was like, it kind of felt like, I know I'm gonna be locked up, but at least mentally I won't be locked up anymore, like, you know what I mean?